Hey out there in Watchland, I'm JD and welcome to my channel. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at jdwatchservice@gmail.com. Now moving right along, first of all, I am Canadian and we don't say a boot. For you Americans out there, we don't say a boot. So it's a boot 8 o'clock right now, and I figured I'd give you a bit of an update and some technique I use to repair this watch. So this is a Hamilton pocket watch size 16. It should be a 992 movement. Its lower balance jewel was cracked all to heck. It looked like someone took a sledgehammer to it, and the jewel and jewel setting needed to be replaced. So the challenge here was actually to find the right jewel setting with the right size jewel and jewel hole to match this watch. And I did a video previously on how I did that. It's a lot of jewel hunting and figuring out what to do. Then when you find the jewel setting, then you've got to kind of adapt this jewel setting to this particular watch. The hardest part of it was actually the end shake. So I'm going to explain that. But before we do that, here's the watch that you can see on the right hand side, the pocket watch here. And I just want to show you its numbers, I'll say. So its amplitude and its current rate without much adjustment on the rate. So I'll just stop and flip over to my Watchscape analyzer, watch escapement analyzer and timer. I sound like Elmer Fudd this morning. That's all, folks. All right, let's stop this here. So as you can see on the in the software, the watch escapement analyzer and timer software, very good stuff. I've got my locking threshold around 19% here. I'm getting an amplitude of about 300 degrees, so 308 degrees here, and the average rate is 15 seconds per day. I can fix that, no issue. And this is with the movement down, actually it's called face down. I'm not going to do all 5 positions and stuff, but if you look at the trace over here on the side, you can see the trace numbers are very good. And those trace numbers where you see them staggering left, right, left, right, left, right, like there are a couple of army guys walking to the mess, are actually the beat error. You can see the beat error is that little distance between those two soldiers marching, and that's the beat error. So the beat error is actually 1 millisecond, which is not too bad actually given the amplitude of this watch. And if I flip it into different positions, that beat error might change slightly, but this is pretty good. I've seen beat errors of 4 milliseconds and stuff on watches that still run fairly accurately, so I don't want to mess with this beat error. That would mean rotating the hairspring collet left or right by X degrees in order to close down that beat error, but I don't think it's worth risking the other things you have to do to take the balance off and fart around with the hairspring to try to fix this beat error. So in general, this watch is running extremely well. The amplitude I'm super impressed with. When I got the watch in, it was running with a very good amplitude, but the jewel was cracked all to heck and was only moments from completely dissolving. I showed that in a previous video, and I was able to repair that. So let's get back to the chat. So I've got a nice little slow-mo from my iPhone on this balance, and you can see the amount of degrees it's spinning. So it's spinning 360 degrees from one point plus another 90. So whatever 360 plus 90 is, that's how far it's spinning. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 410 degrees spin on this balance. That is a massive spin on a balance. So that is an excellent amplitude result. Okie dokie, let's move on here. Okie dokie. So what I did to fix this problem is I had too much end shake. So I've shown you this diagram before. So this is the jewel. I got it resting on all kinds of tools, but this is the jewel setting. This is the jewel here, right? And this is its setting in blue here. So it's stuck in the setting. And the problem I had was I needed to move this jewel a little closer because the pivot from the balance staff, this is the balance staff pivot here, wasn't going through the jewel hole itself. It was kind of over here. And when I looked at I flipped the movement around and looked at it through my microscope, and I could see that the actual pivot wasn't getting into that jewel hole. So the jewel needed to be lowered in the plate, the lower plate. So what I did was I removed material from the outside edge. So if you look at a jewel setting really closely, it looks like a donut, but it's stepped down. And the step here is what actually rests, as you can see over here, it actually rests on the plate. So there's no moving of the plate. You don't want to do anything with respect to the actual lower plate of this jewel. So this would be the face plate in this case, right? So maybe the upper. So, but when you flip it around, it's the lower. So anyway, you don't want to remove material from here. You want to remove material from the setting. So when I looked at the setting and I compared it to the original setting, this part of that setting was fatter, right? So it was more wide. And so I had to reduce the width here. So now the proper way to do it would probably have been to shellac this setting with the jewel onto a copper wire, and then center it, and then after I'd center it, I'd be able to take a graver and actually grave down some of this material. So that is what I'm going to do in my next job. But this job, I decided, well, I'm going to do this by hand, and I'll show you exactly what I did. So let's get a close up of a jewel setting for a second. So this is a lower balance jewel setting here, and as you can see, and try to see this without screwing this up, I'm going to use my tweezers to point here. So that's the jewel in the center, right? So the hole has to be correct for the balance. So the pivot has to go through that hole perfectly, without too much side shake, and that's the pivot actually rattling back and forth inside the donut hole. And this first step here, this is a step here that goes down into the plate, right? And then the rim here on the edge is the second step, and this rim on the edge is what catches the inside rim of the watch plate, as I showed in the diagram. So if you look at it sideways, I'm going to try to grab this and move it sideways. On camera effects. So there you see it sideways, and if you see the side that's facing to the left is a side that's too thick, and material has to be removed from that side in order for the actual jewel to push down further to the right, as I'm showing here and just sort of demonstrating. So the plate would be on vertical here, and I'd want to move that to the right just a bit to allow the balance staff pivot to go through that hole. So that was the problem. So now to do that, you would have to, this is really small, like if you look at, this is my thumb, okay, so we're looking at a dirty fingernail. Oh my God, fix that. There's my finger. We'll put my finger in here with my guitar fingernails. So there's my finger. So this is small, right? I should have just thrown a coin in there or something. Compared to a small rubber band. No, I'll throw my glasses in there. There we go. This is how big this is compared to my glasses. So you get an idea of the size of that jewel setting. So what I did, I said, well, I really haven't gotten experience trimming this off using a shellac method. Now I have jeweling collets, but when you put this down like this into a collet, it actually doesn't allow you to expose the material on the second step here, the one with the largest diameter. So you can't expose this material to actually remove material from it. So the first thing I actually had to do is I had to remove material from the outer edge of this jewel setting, and I did that using a diamond plate, and then holding the setting in a pin vise, and then rotating the setting in the pin vise as I very carefully remove material from the diamond plate. So that was my first thing, to make sure the setting actually fit, because it was a little bit too wide. So I trimmed the setting down with a diamond plate. It takes a little bit of patience here, but you effectively put the setting in, and then you rotate it, and as you remove the material from the edge here. So again, I think shellacking it to a piece of brass wire that's just slightly narrower than this particular setting would have been the proper thing to do in this case, but I went in hard with the manual labor. So I'll show you the tools I used. So in order to grab the setting, I use this very handy flat mouth pin vise. So I've got a number of pin vices. You get them of all different types. Your typical pin vise for doing watch work would look like this, and maybe you'd use this for actually grabbing a screw in the balance wheel and tightening it or removing it. So and the beauty behind these pin vices is you can use your thumb to tighten them. So it's got a slider here that actually just grips that and tightens it, so you can see that how that works. And so you'd grab the jewel and then use your thumb to tighten the grip on the jewel setting. And so this pointed pin vise actually has a gap in the middle because it's used to grab round material as well. So I've got lots of pin vices. So if you're doing watch repair, procure a lot of pin vices because you're going to need them. So I used a flat mouth pin vise, which was perfect, and then I would take the tweezers and very carefully see if I can do this. Pin vise was in an open state like that, and then I would grab the tweezers like this and then take the jewel setting and then put it so that the pin vise is grabbing almost in the center of the jewel setting like that. So that got that kind of situation here, and I'm going to just zoom in on this for a second to show you. There, now you can see how it's grabbing that setting. So I've got a good grip on that setting right in the center, so it's not going to move at all. And now the challenge was to remove material from that from the edge of that setting. So I have a Valrobe pivot file here. They're right $130 for one of these things, but they're worth every cent. So one side of it is just metal. This is I believe it's stainless steel, but someone can correct me. But this side is for burnishing a pivot. So there's lines going this way on this that are used with oil to actually burnish the pivot. When I get down to the end here, this edge here is rounded. So the rounded edge would be for the rounded part of the pivot as you're burnishing the pivot. But these other edges are squared off, 90 degrees squared off, and very precise. So if I flip this around, let me have a look at this for a second. So if I flip this around, you have the same thing here. So as you go down, this is a file. So this is a very fine file. And you get down to the edge here, and this is rounded on the end with actually no filing material right on the edge there. So, but filing material on this side and this side. That way you can get right into that rounded part of the pivot on a balance staff and fix that or file that properly. But these edges here are completely squared, and if I look over here, this edge is completely squared off too. So, and you can see a little bit of material on here. This is the edge I used actually to work on that pivot. So what I did was I took the pivot, I'll just tighten this up a little more, and here I've got the pivot. I'm going to focus up just a bit, so please bear with me so I want to get you a good picture here, show you what I was up to. So I grabbed this and I had to remove material from this step here. So I knew that I had to get on the inside of this step. So to do that, I had the square side here. Now if I look at this, the side of this is not a file material, right? Only this side and this side are material that you can file with, and not these sides. So I knew I was able to flip this around and get a 90-degree square on it. And then as I move this, I could put this right into the edge like that and then file like this, back and forth. So I did that. I would file this. In fact, I kept the file straight and I moved I found that moving the file was a little less accurate than, to make it true to flat, than actually moving the setting. So maybe it's different for you, but it takes a lot of technique to figure this out. But what I would do is, or what I did was I filed this like this, filed it down, and then, I tried to get a little bit of an angle here so I could get more than, a couple of degrees of flatness. And then I would look at the edge here, and I looked at how much material I had removed. And in this case, I wanted to remove, this is actually the same type setting I used, and I wanted to remove about half of the width of that setting, of the main step in the setting. I wanted to remove about half that width. So I was comparing it to the edge that I hadn't filed yet, and I filed that down, and I'd have a look at it, and then filed it down and have a look at it, and I kept doing that. And I did it at this angle to remove material, and I'd move it this angle, and then I do move it at this angle. So, and what I did notice that if you aren't careful and this rotates a little bit, you end up creating like a sawtooth by doing that. By doing this, it goes down and up, and you get a sawtooth. So you don't want that, and you had to flatten it. So I ended up creating a bit of a sawtooth, and I saw the sawtooth. My God, of all the tooth I ever saw, I never saw a saw that saws like that saw saws. So I sawed the sawtooth, and I just flattened that sawtooth out. And I got a bit better as I rotated it. So then after I did that, I dropped the jewel, because there was no way of rotating. I just took the jewel like this, got rid of it from the setting, looked at what I had removed already, like that, said, oh, I removed that already, and then said, okay, reinsert it into the pin vise like this, bam, it's in the pin vise, and then back at it. So that is actually how I get the material down on this to allow this jewel setting to be lowered. So that was a lot of work. So I think it can be done on a lathe with a bit of experience. I didn't have any experience actually shellacking the jewel setting to the lathe, because I had step collets and other collets that are used for doing a similar job, and so I've never had to really shellac a setting onto a copper wire on the end of a lathe, right? But I'm going to try doing that today, so because I've got another one of these to do, and I really want to do it the right way. So this is not the wrong way; it just takes a lot of time. So it's a old school of watchmaking way maybe, but this is like hand adjusted, I think. So, but it worked great. So when I put this back into movement, I laid it flat in the movement, and I used a concave stake, right? And I put that concave stake right over the top of this, and then I tapped this down into the watch movement to make sure it was flat in there. So, and it didn't take any real tapping to put that in properly, right? I pushed it in with a piece of flat pegwood first, and then I was able to tap it down to make sure that it was seated all the way into where this edge is, right? So it's not at any kind of an angle when it's sitting in the actual watch movement. If this thing is not tapped in perfectly, and you haven't removed the material, enough material consistently, so the same amount around the outer ring, then you're going to have it at an angle a bit. And if it's at an angle, then the pivot will go through the hole at an angle, and then you've got another hole problem. So that's not riding properly, and your side shake is going to be off. So too tight. So obviously, by showing you this movement, this was wound last night around 6 o'clock, and so it's not a full day, but it's quite a few hours. It's more than 12 hours of power, and this thing is still running over 300 degrees in amplitude. So brilliant. So it worked like a charm. Now I'm going to show you a book. So I did a little research last night after I did this and said, what do the pros say about all this? So did I do like a hacking job, or was I supposed to actually take material off of the setting, or what, right? So let me look at this book. So this book is a real gem. It's called Bench Practices for Watch Repairs by H.B. Fried. I think it's Fried. So it's got a very nice picture of a bounce hanging from a hairspring and a bounce cock. So here's the book. So I'm going to open it up to the section that actually addressed this. All right, here is the Gospel according to Fried. So I was curious what they had said about this. So first of all, they did talk about shellacking the setting onto a brass rod, I think. Yeah, so setting may also be shellacked to a brass rod centered and stepped or cut. So this allows you access to the step that I talked about earlier, this step right here. It also allows you access to the edge of the wider diameter part of the setting, and there's shellacked on here, and I do have shellac, so we're good there. So as you also notice, the brass rod is smaller than the setting itself, and that allows you to trim trim down the larger diameter of the setting to fit into the plate of the watch. If it's the same size, you can't do that because you'd be trimming the brass rod with a shellac as well. So you have to have a smaller brass rod in here, probably the same diameter as the inside ring of the setting, right? So, because you're not going to be going down lower than that, so you have to maintain this step here. So in this case, what I did was I made this step, as I show you with my tweezers here, the step is this wide here, and I made it more narrow. So I narrowed this thing down, but I narrowed it on this side, like that, and that thereby allowing me to take this setting with the plate here and drop it in further to actually reduce the end shake. So let's look at the text and see what they have to say. So if I look at the text here, and you guys can read as well as I can, but I'm going to read it. So it says, in making a balance jewel setting without the sample, stepping device or jewel chucks are preferred because the operation can be performed with the least effort. I'm reading sideways, by the way. And furthermore, the setting may be removed occasionally for a trial fit. That is a perfect thing to do, by the way. You actually carve this to the right level. You take the plate, right, and then you push the plate on to make sure the setting actually sits in there well. So I have a video online that I showed on how to make a jewel setting, and I show you how I actually fit the jewel setting into the plate. So that's so you leave the shellac. In this case here, the jewel setting that I was making wasn't cut off yet, so I actually had the jewel setting was in fact a complete piece of brass. So it was a brass rod and a brass jewel setting, and it was pre-cutting it off to fit it to make sure I had the right hole size. So that's the first thing I did in making a jewel setting. But in this case, you're adjusting a jewel setting. So it says when trial fitting the balance jewel setting, its shoulder should be high enough to allow the setting to sit into the balance bridge so that the balance pivot just reaches the top of the balanced jewel hole. So it's going through the jewel, and it's just reaching the very top of the balanced jewel. And on the top of the balanced jewel, in fact, would be another jewel here, which you would be putting on top here, which would be the cap jewel. So it would reach right to the top, and then the cap jewel would be on the end there, with a little bit of end shake between the cap jewel and the actual tip of the pivot. So that's saying that. So if the pivot does not extend to the top of the hole during the trial fit, return the setting to the lathe chuck, and so you chuck it up and then make the step higher, allowing for the setting to go lower into the balance bridge and the staff pivot to further or reach further into the jewel hole. So effectively, and there's more information on that, but that is effectively what I did to repair this. And just so you don't have to reverse your video, Bench Practices for Watch Repairs by H.B. Fried or Fred or something, for I-E-D. And I'm going to flip it open here quickly, and there it is there. And it's got all kinds of really cool stuff in it. I'm just going to do this flipping while you watch. Back it up just a bit so you can see it. And it's a little sideways. I'm sorry, it's a camera issue, but so there you go. So this book also has selecting a hairspring, collating hairsprings, true hairsprings, vibrating, studding a hairspring, replacing regulator pins, jeweling, uprighting, all kinds of jeweling stuff that's in there, and all this stuff. And this is actually all that's in this book, but this is really seriously detailed work, right? So your other books, the Watch Repairer's Manual, has stuff like this in here, but not to the level that this book describes what to do. So this is an amazing book when it comes to detailed watch work and very laborious watch work, and what to pay attention to, and how to drill things, and how to cut settings, and you name it, it's in this book. So this book is an excellent resource. So try to get a copy of one of these online, and you will not regret it. So that's my story this morning, and how I repaired this beautiful 992, I think, watch movement. I keep saying I think. I should really look at it, but it's a very nice Hamilton 21 jewel railroad grade watch movement that was sent to me by Max. I'll just say Max from Calgary. Good guy, and he had this challenge for me that I took, and I'm a very busy guy these days. I'm not retired yet, so still working and working hard. So I can't do as many watch repairs I would normally do if I was in fact retired. But I'm not yet, so we're looking at only weekends and perhaps the occasional evening that I might be able to do watch work. So if my wife Josie allows me to do watch work, I'm just kidding. She actually likes when I get out of her way and go do some watch work so she can do her stuff. So, but the next job I'm going to do, I'm going to basically shellac this onto a piece of brass wire for the setting and adjust the setting. The first time I do it, I'm going to do it on an old setting. That's something I don't care about, so I can trial it and practice it, see how easy it is. Centering it is going to be fun. Use a piece of pegwood to actually hold the jewel in place, a jewel setting in place through the hole, and then center that thing on the shellac with the brass rod and the shellac. And I'll probably videotape this because it's kind of a neat technique. I'm going to do it first on my own to make sure I've got the technique down, and then I'll make a video on how to do it so other people can learn from that, because I really couldn't find a really good video on how to do that. Here's the sessions clock I repaired, and this is a video on my phone. Have a listen to the chime. That was absolutely a squirrel moment. Squirrel! Alright, I'm back. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and if you want me to do any videos you want me to do, just let me know. Send me an email at jdwatchservice@gmail.com, and I'll see what I can do. But again, very busy and perhaps only able to do this work on the weekends for now. Christmas is coming up, and I'll have a little bit more time over Christmas to catch up effectively. So see you later. Stay safe. Please stay safe, and hug your family.